So I'm a state official in California, and we have 310,000 teachers.
Yeah.
60 to 65% of them are prepared by the California State University system, San Jose State, Los Angeles State, and so on. These were originally called normal schools. They were two-year programs. That's part of the problem of prestige, I think, with teaching. It goes back deep into our history where you needed a two-year degree. Then they were called teachers' colleges, then they were called state colleges, then they were made state universities. So they're the big workhorse of the system, the Cal State system. And then there's a set of for-profit and non-profit, non-selective institutions, and they account for another 25%. So the selective institutions like Santa Clara University and UC System and Stanford, I would estimate around 10 to 15% of our supply. So if you're to look at the big problem that I look at when I get in my desk in Sacramento, it's how do I change this big thing? And therefore, what we need are approaches that really show the way for how to do it. And particularly, I think one area that we're looking at the state more closely is beefing up what we already have, which is some kind of end of experience where you demonstrate that you can do this job. And Rachel can maybe talk about, the ending of professional education. It's sort of like the driver's test. You take a multiple choice test, and then you have to go out and drive the car. I still can't park, and and that's the hard part, is the actual performance of it. So I think we need a much more focus on whether you can perform at the end of this. Rachel and Linda Darling-Hammond and others at Stanford have been thinking about this. One of our professors, I would add, Linda Darling-Hammond, is the head of the state's California Teacher Commission. And we live very close to each other, so two of us in 3 blocks away are in these jobs. The final thing I'd mention is that California's had this quirky thing that goes back to 1965, where the view was you should get an undergraduate education in your subject matter, and all teacher training should be at the master's level. And that meant you had to jam the whole thing into roughly 10 or 11 months. And then the state expanded the requirements you have to have as a teacher, more and more courses. So the courses got very short. You get 6 weeks in special education course and so on. So now we finally passed a law allowing this to take place in undergraduate and graduate. And I think it takes that long to do it well. And so that would be another area where we've started an undergraduate program at Stanford, and where we could really point out how do you merge the undergraduate with a graduate level, which is not being done in most of all of the institutions in California. They're mostly graduate level, and they are not master's degrees like Stanford. You get a certificate. So they are certificated programs, sort of like a vocation, if you will, and you succeed to it by passing these courses with so many units.
So Michael, can I ask you a question, because you're involved in the state policy issue? Given this data that says that it's very hard until teachers have a few years of experience to figure out who really is a good teacher, who's going to be a great teacher, who's going to be successful, how can we have a system that gives teachers tenure after, I think it's 2 years or a very short period of time, and has to make a judgment when it's simply too early to make that judgment?
Yeah. I think it's way too early. 2 years is too early. It's a state law. The Governor Schwarzenegger had an initiative on the ballot to extend the tenure period for more than 2 years, and over 60% of the voters voted no. So
there was a big campaign against it.
Yeah, there was. I agree, and there will be again. So now we're getting into the bloody politics of education, which is...
So why do we code this in law? I mean, we don't code this about any other profession where after this year you become a permanent member of that profession.
Well, it's an historical artifact like a lot of things in education. Teachers were not allowed to join unions and were non-unionized for many years. They didn't unionize. across the United States until the 70s. In California, it was 75. So the argument the teachers' organizations made is, well, we have no protection from unions, therefore we have to go to the state and get these laws. So we passed these laws on 2 years of tenure, hard to dismiss teachers, and things of that sort. And then when collective bargaining came in 75, we didn't repeal those laws and say, you bargain those locally, which is the rational decision. We just piled the collective bargaining on top of the existing state laws. And we have been unable politically, either by votes of the people or through the legislature, to change these around. So I don't have a rational answer. I'll give you a political answer and a historical answer. But that's part of my field, is understanding that as well.
So let me take the question back to Stanford students. I don't know, I really haven't heard of any other university president of an R1 university, like President Hennessy, to come out so clearly and so powerfully in support of education in general and teaching as a profession. So we thank you every day.
Oh, thank you.
And of course, Dean Steele, well, both President Hennessy and Dean Steele, to be rather crass, put their money where their mouth is. And so in addition to the fact that Stanford undergraduates are leaders, they want to have impact on the world, they want to change the world. And as I explained earlier, you do that through teaching. I think that what we have, which makes us so lucky, is we have very significant fellowships. We have a forgivable loan that is up right now up to $15,000 for 4 years of service. That makes just the thought of spending an additional year at Stanford a little more manageable. It's really important. We know that from people who apply, from people who come to STEP, how important that is, that when you take on a loan of, another $60,000, you don't go out and make $38,000 the first year that you graduate. And then, of course, we attract by providing the best preparation possible. And the numbers that I quoted earlier, I think, speak for themselves. I think that the fact that our graduates stay in the profession is not only because of their commitment and passion, but also because they're well prepared. So I'm not sure that I have a lot to add to the conversation about the tenure after 2 years. But just a few weeks ago, we got an email from one of our graduates who in her second year of teaching was nominated Teacher of the Year in Florida. She lives in Florida. We have those stories quite often. They're teachers of the year, they are teachers of the school, whatever. The beginning teacher providers have had to develop a separate track for STEP graduates because they're so advanced, and principals say that our graduates perform like third-year teachers at least. And it's due to the program and who they are.